So bear with me, I'm getting over laryngitis. I'll do my best here. I love Peter Pan. I think it started when I was a kid. Someone took me to the Academy of Music in Philadelphia to see the musical. I love the play, I love the book, I love the musical. And when I was a senior in high school, as luck would have it, that was our musical that year. And I was already like this Peter Pan freak, so I was really excited. And I got to be stage manager. And we brought in a crew from California that set up this flying rig so that the actors were really flying around the stage. And part of my duties as stage manager was to stand downstage in the wings so that at the end of the first act, I pulled the curtain closed. And that last scene was, Peter comes to the nursery looking for his shadow, and the kids wake up. They're like, "Who are you? What are you doing?" He says, "I'm going to teach you to fly. Go away to Neverland." That's the Cliff's Notes version. But the crew was standing behind the nursery set, and so Peter throws the fairy dust, and he teaches the kids to fly, and they start flying, and the crew pulls the set away, and it's just this black backdrop, and they're flying, and it was really cool. We called it the aerial ballet. And standing downstage in the wings, we would invite small children at each performance to come and sit in the front, and you could hear these kids just freaking out, oohing and ahhing when everybody started flying. And I'm getting chills just thinking about it. It made me cry every time, and then I got to pull the curtain closed, and it was great. And years later, I had a son who, from the time he was a baby, I started reading Peter Pan to, and he didn't show a particular interest in it. It wasn't his favorite book, but he tolerated my love of it and listened. And I didn't think he, had internalized much of this story. But, at this point, we've got my license plate on my car says Jolly Roger. It's Captain Hook's ship. And we have a cat named Mrs. Darling after the mother in Peter Pan. This is the truth. And Kathy Rigby was doing a farewell tour of the musical. And it was going to be at the Academy of Music in Philly. And so I took Carter to it. And, he was young enough, if you've seen him tell stories here before, he's like 6'4", he's a big guy. And it's also getting me choked up to think about how little he was. I remember he was standing at his seat. He was that little. And, I thought he wasn't all that interested in the story, but when I took him to see it live, he knew it by heart. He knew all the dialogue. And as we got close to a punchline, he was like having the preemptive kind of giggles, it's like anticipating the punchline. And he was really into it and really loved it. And then when he got to high school, he plays trumpet, and he was auditioning for the Pit for the musical, and he came home and he said, "You're not going to believe this. We're doing Peter Pan." So I got to see him or hear him play for this musical that we loved so much, and that was part of our family's history. And I bought tickets to every single performance. There were 4 performances, of course. And I had different people lined up to come each night and enjoy the show with me. And my brother couldn't come on the night that he was supposed to come, so last minute, a friend was going to pinch hit and come in, and he wanted to see Carter too. So I was waiting in the lobby for him. He was coming over to York from Lancaster, and he was a little bit late. So I'm the only one in the lobby, and they're flicking the lights, right? The show's about to start. And in walks this guy I know, Aaron, whom I had booked his band before. I'd known him for maybe 10 years, didn't know him all that well, but he came walking in, and I said, "What are you doing here? Do you know a kid that's in the show?" And he said, "No, funny story. I'm meeting up with my high school friends that I haven't seen since we did this show together 10 years ago. And, we're here to see it." And I said, "Well, full circle. I was the stage manager the first time they did it, and now my son is in the Pit tonight." So I go in and I watch the show, and it's wonderful. And then I texted him afterwards. I still don't, to this day, know why I had his number in my phone, but I had it, and I texted him, and I said, "I have to know, you were a pirate, weren't you?" And he wrote back and said, "Well, technically, I played Captain Hook." And I was like, "Oh, shit. Okay, well, we started hanging out. That was kind of like, if he knows all the words to Peter Pan, we should at least be friends." So he can quote it, it's great. And we started hanging out, and friends, that was a new beginning for me. I had just been through, not too long before that, an unreasonably ugly and cruel breakup, and I was kind of like just sort of lost. And we started hanging out. He messaged me and said, "Hey, what are you doing this Tuesday?" And I said, I'm going to Lancaster Story Slam. It's this new thing. I can't wait to check it out. And he's like, what's a Story Slam? And he came along, and I think he came in second place that night. He put his name in. And again, I was like, shit. He can quote Captain Hook, and he's a really great storyteller. That seems like maybe something I should invest in. And we're coming up in another couple months on that being 3 years ago, and many of you know him from telling stories here. Fortunately, he's homesick tonight. That's probably good, because I'd probably be crying telling it if he were here. But Peter Pan brought me a new beginning. So.